And welcome back to another Jason Sports Rundown podcast. It's the 9th of June episode. And this episode is going to be a bit of a different one, as promised from last week that would be something special. So we have a little bit of a change up to different things. It's going to be some new segments, some new stuff. And overall, with that, obviously always appreciate any and all feedback for the episode and the new sort of experimented stuff on this episode. So make sure you do let me know any of that and all that. So it really will help me massively to kind of go about the future episodes and what I do with all that sort of the content and the podcast and all that sort of stuff. So an introduction to the episodes, or sorry, segments for today's episode, seeing there are a few new ones. We're going to kick off the show with looking at the Queensland Origin and New South Wales Origin teams for game number 2. We'll take a look at what I predicted. I think it was last week. This time last week. And see how different the actual announced teams are and, you know, how badly I did. Hopefully not badly I did on some of them. Then we'll go look around the sporting around the globe. Got a lot to talk about. NBA, IndyCar, F1, NHL, all of that sort of stuff. And then we're going to go into some other news segments. So we'll be doing a Brisbane Lions game review. So we'll be just talking about the Brisbane Lions this week. We'll go a little bit more into depth of that over an AFL round review. We'll be highlighting Queensland Day. So we'll be looking at the NRL and Super Rugby games that happened as part of Queensland Day. And then we'll be looking at the Queensland Reds match against the Chiefs and doing a season review. That's a bit of a spoiler for you if you don't know yet, but if you don't, make sure you stick around for that part as well. So a lot of new stuff on this one. So without further ado, we'll take a small break and we'll be back with the discussion around the State of Origin Game 2 team lists. And we're back after a short break here now with the Queensland teams talk. So we predicted the teams, I believe it was in our June 2nd episode it was. So last week's Tuesday episode, we predicted what I thought were the teams. And for those who haven't listened to the episode, one, go and listen to the episode. It's really good. Just my opinion, but you should. So the teams that I picked, so I had Tedesco, Toto, Staggs, Crichton, and then I had McLean coming in for Kohler on the wing. Moses Cleary, Haas, Robson, Yo going to the front row, Young, Olakau'atu, Murray taking the 13. Coruscant there, Radley, Barnett, and Fanua Blake. Strange Kohler as the extended 6, and then Lucas as the 20th man. For Queensland, I had Ponga, Cobbo, Toya, Hammer, Fafita, Munster, Dearden. I had Dearden purely off the talk that he was going to be fit. It doesn't even look like that was really a chance. But you got to pick something every now and again. Then I had it staying Flegler, Grant, Tino, Cotter, Capel, Plath, Nikora, Collins. I had Gilbert in as it with Paddy Carrigan being ruled out at that point. Then I had Walsh, Walker as sort of with the fact that Dearden was going to play 7, Purdue, and then Finiaki as the 20th man. Now, firstly, we'll look at New South Wales. What did I get right? What didn't I get right? Let's see it all. So, Tedesco, I had Toto. I had Casey McLean in my team. I had him on the wing, though. He is actually taking the place of Stephen Crichton, who was ruled out. So, I had Crichton in. I had McLean in, but Crichton ruled out almost last hour after he'd already been named in the team. So, he's out. Staggs keeps his spot, which I had, and then Kohler comes in, which with me not having Crichton, I would have had that coming straight in anyway. So very, very close there. Moses has been named. Cleary is there. Haas is back in the side, so is Robson continues at 9. They have stuck with Yo at 13 though, and Barnett has retained the spot there. So not much of a thing. I still had Barnett in the side, just on the bench, because I really feel like a lot of people that Murray 13, Yo 10 is the way to go. It's not what they went with once again, but we'll see how that goes. I had Hudson Young. The big upset that I think is it, but it was rumoured a lot earlier throughout the days, and it's getting stronger towards this. And Dylan Lucas is going to start with Hudson Young in the second row. I had Olakau'atu, so Olakau'atu being the 20th man. basically a straight swap there for what I had with Lucas being it instead. It's a big call, but definitely he's been in great form this year, Lucas, so it's very interesting. Murray on the bench, I had 13. Radley, I had there. Fanua Blake, I had on the bench. I also had Barnett on the bench, but you've got Coruscant there, which I also had anyway. Which is to say the least interesting. Now that I'm looking at it, I had an extra person in there anyway, so I was playing on so many people, which is interesting. Strange is there, unfortunately, him being 18th. I had Kohler as the 19th in there, or I guess 20th, what I really had. But with all the Crichton stuff, Marky Mark, Nunning Inouase is in. Big love that one. I didn't predict it, didn't even think there was a chance of it. He wasn't named to play at the point, so it was interesting to even predict that one, but that is crazy. And yeah, Ola Kawatu there in at 20th. Now for Queensland, I think I've done a lot better, minus the Dearden part. So Ponga, Cobbo, Toya, Hammer, Fafita, Munster, Walker there, which in essence I had minus the me thinking Dearden would play. Flegler, Grant, and Tino are there. The only one that I gotten wrong from it is that Cotter has moved from the second row, which means Nikora is going to start in the second row with Capel, and then Cotter is going to play 13, moving Plath to the bench. I had all of those players. I just had Nikora as the one on the bench, not Plath. Collins I had. I had Gilbert. I felt that Gilbert would be a really well placed guy in there, in the bench with Walsh. They've gone with Finiaki and Liero, and then Walsh as the 18th man. I went with Jackson Purdue. Again, I'm really big on the guy. I feel like it would have been a great pick, particularly with the fact that they have done what I didn't do, which I had Walker still in there, but they don't have like another half. They've gone purely with Welsh and Talangi. So that's a big call to leave out no sort of halves cover unless that cover is coming from Kalen Ponga maybe. I'm not sure where it's coming from, but it'll definitely be interesting. Maybe Max Plath is to play there. I'm not sure, but that's definitely interesting. With them going Finiaki for his debut, Liero staying, Walsh 18, Talangi 19th, and Lukey getting a shot at the 20th man, which didn't even come into my sort of considerations with me having Finiaki staying as the 20th. But Lukey has well and truly deserved to be in the Queensland camp. So we've done fairly well in some areas. I think we've done a lot better with Queensland. But overall, we've gotten most of the players in there. It's really reshuffles. And, some players starting, some players on the bench that I had the opposite. But a lot of it is there, with only a few minor ones. So in terms of my predictions, I think I did pretty well. It's going to be very exciting. Next week, we'll definitely be talking more about the game itself, with next Wednesday being game 2, which is really big for Queensland. We've got to win the game, so we've got to come out and play exactly, if not better, than what we did in game 1 to start, and make sure that we don't have any reason towards the end of the game to feel that New South Wales has a chance to even come back and win the game. We'll take a short break, and we'll be back with the Sporting Around the Globe segment. And we're back with the Sporting Around the Globe segment here on the Jason Sports Rundown podcast. It's the 9th of June episode. We're here doing the Sporting Around the Globe once again. And it's really topical to talk about with what we've got to kick off this segment with, which is the NBA playoffs, because Game 3 has just wrapped up at the time of recording this, which for me is at 2 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Game 3 wrapped up, which is really cool to see how it was going to shape, because the first 2 games were really looking one way, which was in the favor of the Knicks. Game number 1, though, for the Knicks, they win 105-95 over the Spurs and take the game 1 for themselves away from home in San Antonio. They come back game 2 again in San Antonio, and their Knicks won again 105-104, so very narrow win for the Knicks, but they win 2 on the road to start the NBA Final Series. And then Game 3 today, the Spurs come from behind 115-111 to beat the Knicks at Madison Square Garden, away from home, and to keep the series at 2-1 going into the second game in New York, game number 4 in the coming days. So they have really turned the series at least a bit more towards their direction, making the series 2-1. If they'd gone down 3-0 with game 4 and a clinching game away from home, the Spurs would have been in a lot of trouble. So game 3 win for them is a huge win and a big result. We'll move on to the Grand Prix of Madison in IndyCar's latest weekend. We'll take a look at the top 10 finishes, the highest, the biggest movers and the biggest fallers in the race. A few of those are always very exciting to see. In 10th, Christian Lundgaard for Arrow McLaren. In 9th, it's Marcus Armstrong for Meyershank Racing. Will Power in 8th for Andretti Global, who had a really good race there with all 3 of them in the top 10. Another team who did really well this weekend, which is Team Penske, who had 3 drivers in the top 7. First of which is David Malukas in 7th. Kyle Kirkwood, another Andretti Global racer, in 6th. Team Penske, Scott McLaughlin in 5th. In 4th, it's Rinus Venke Junkos, Hollinger Racing. In 3rd, Christian Rasmussen with a big race for ECR. Andretti Global's Marcus Ericsson in 2nd. And the winner, Joseph Newgarden for Team Penske. Big win for him. Biggest movers, Will Power started in 21st and finished in 8th. Christian Rasmussen, as mentioned just there, he finished 3rd, but he started 19th. And Marcus Ericsson as well on the podium. He started 12th, he finished 2nd. So a couple of really big risers and movers in the race. For the biggest fallers, no bigger faller than Alex Palou, who started on pole and ended up finishing 17th for the defending IndyCar champion. Felix Rosenqvist started 4th, finished 14th, and Graham Rahul, a big drop from 11th to 23rd. So a few lucky ones and a few less lucky ones for sure. More racing action, and F1 Monaco Grand Prix was on this past weekend. And we'll go over the finishing order and big points out of that race. Starting off with the DNFs, Max Verstappen for Red Bull Racing, Valtteri Bottas for Cadillac, Behrman for Haas F1, Norris for McLaren, Stroll for Aston Martin, and Leclerc for Ferrari. In 16th, you've got Sainz for Williams, 15th, Sergio Perez for Cadillac, Franco Colapinto in 14th for Alpine. In 13th, Nico Hülkenberg for Audi. In 12th, George Russell for Mercedes. 11th is Gabriel Bortoleto for Audi. In 10th, it's Alonso for Aston Martin. In 9th, Ocon for Haas F1 team. In 8th, Alex Albon for Williams. In 7th, Gasly for Alpine. In 6th, it's Lindblad for Racing Bulls. In 5th, Liam Lawson for Racing Bulls. In 4th, Oscar Piastri, the Aussie, in for McLaren. In 3rd on the podium, Isaac Hadjar for Red Bull Racing. In 2nd, another podium in another back-to-back races, Lewis Hamilton for Ferrari. And a 5th win in a row for Kimi Antonelli for Mercedes. What a effort to win. The youngest Monaco Grand Prix winner. And his reign this year continues to get better and better each and every week. Big points from the race. The unfortunate Leclerc and Stroll, who both suffered crashes due to faulty track surfaces. Leclerc's, being the second of the 2 crashes because of the same result, ended up in a lengthy red flag delay as well. Norris battling engine troubles. Behrman had a lap 1 incident with his teammate. Bottas facing overheating issues. Verstappen with mechanical issues off the start, which caused him to go from second to last in one start of the race. And unlucky for all of them. Sainz, towards the end, had it tough. 2 being hit twice to end his race and just finished in 16th. Perez was looking on in 10th, but with a penalty pushed him down. Same with Colapinto, Hülkenberg, and Russell, who had to serve a drive-through, pushing him down there. Bortoleto fought hard from starting in the pit lane. Alonso scoring Aston Martin's first points of the season. Ocon and Albon very happy to score their team some points as well. and Ocon get one over on his teammate Behrman. Gasly, so unfortunate. All of the talk. He finished third, but with the 10-second time penalty for speeding in the pits, which pretty much a lot of drivers had to face, including Hamilton, Piastri, all of them. Tough weekend for him to drop down to 7th. Lindblad Lawson really benefited 5th and 6th for Racing Bulls. It's a tied highest finish for him, Lawson, and Lindblad, it's his highest finish in F1, so big result for them. Huge amount of points. Piastri really fought back to finish in 4th. Hadjar keeps 3rd place after a review into his possible penalty. Hamilton, a big result to come in 2nd, and if it wasn't for Leclerc, that could have been a real shot at a double podium for Ferrari. And Antonelli continues to do it. 5 wins in a row. The youngest Monaco Grand Prix winner. He's got one of the Triple Crown already. And if somehow Mercedes let this guy race in the Indy 500 and Le Mans, and it doesn't interfere with F1, and he's got a real shot, he looks like he'll be the youngest Triple Crown winner ever. Not that he'll probably be focused on that. I think at the moment, that first F1 Drivers' Championship will be everything that he'll want, and he'll want to make sure that he doesn't have to win it like Norris did last year and wait all the way to the last race of the year in Abu Dhabi. He'll be wanting to try and finish that one up earlier than that. And then to wrap up the sporting around the globe segment, NHL. Game 1 we already talked about with the win going to the Golden Knights. The Hurricanes bounced back in Game 2 to win 4-3 over the Golden Knights, tying the series 1-1. In Game 3, Golden Knights win 5-4 in overtime over the Hurricanes to take the series lead back, giving the Knights a 2-1 lead going into Game 1. So, Knights, like the Knicks, are taking a 2-1 game lead, a 2-1 lead into Game 4 of their respective Stanley Cup and NBA Final series. So, those are both going to be wrapping up in this week, next week. So really exciting stuff to see. We'll take a short break and we'll be back with our Brisbane Lions game review. And we're back after a short break here with the Brisbane Lions game review. We've been used to the AFL game reviews, or round reviews, We're going to do something different. We're going to talk really exclusively here about the Brisbane Lions, and perfectly because it's also talking about the Suns as part of Queensland Day, which we'll go into about the other games in our next segment. But starting here, Lions and Suns, Saturday the 6th of June on Queensland Day, 5:15 p.m, start time at People First Stadium. The Lions come away with a 106-75 point win over the Suns, which is huge. Looking at the stats, the disposal leaders for the Lions, Lachie Neale led the way hugely, 37 disposals. Wilmot with 25 and Bailey with 24. For the Suns, their disposal leaders, Noble led the way hugely as well with 36, Rioli with 27 and Anderson with 25. And the Lions goal leaders, one stands above the rest, that's for sure. Which is Logan Morris, who had a career-high 7 goals in a game. What a big moment for him. So happy for him. Charlie Cameron with 2. Jimmy Tunstall in the side again with a goal as well. For the goal leaders for the Suns, King with 4 and Waltz with 2. Big for them. And Long also getting 2 as well. The mark leaders for the Lions, Wilmot 9, Morris 9, and Levi Ashcroft with 8. For the Suns, Noble led the way once again with 15 marks for the game. Miller with 9 and Mac Andrews with 7. And this is a big one. A big one for both sides coming into this game. This was one, if the Suns had won, they could have really put the Lions into a hole they couldn't come back from. And considering the Suns have to go and play their next 4 games, which are hugely tough. I think they've got Collingwood, Geelong, Hawthorn and Fremantle in 4 weeks in a row. That is about as hard of a comp sort of schedule you're going to get in 4 weeks. So Suns are going to have a brutal 4 weeks, or the best 4 weeks of their life, depending on how many of those games they win and lose. So be interesting for them, and this one would have been a big one for them. The Lions, on the other hand, after everything that's happened, can they do it? they show that once again, when their defense is up to it, they put a lot of intensity, a lot of effort into this game, and they came away with the result. They maybe didn't score as much as they'd ideally like, but every time you put over 100 and you keep the team to 75, you've had a really good effort. So this is a big result for the Lions and shows that they are still capable of top 8. They can still win the comp. Those questions for me were never even things I considered. But there was a lot of talk about the Lions coming in this one, and this one really settles that down massively. So it's a big result for the Lions, and they'll be looking to have a even better result in the coming week when they play Richmond on Sunday at 1 o'clock. If they can come out and just throw Richmond to the sword and demoralize them, they'll be in another tick 2 weeks in a row, because there's no way they should be coming out of this weekend's game with Richmond and having anything but a win or a big win. So hopefully that will be the case. We'll take a short break. We'll be back with the Queensland Day. We'll talk about the NRL and the Super Netball and wrap that all up for you. We're back after a short break here with the Queensland Day review, with the NRL and Super Netball review. Getting way ahead of myself there with the Queensland Reds sort of stuff. We'll talk about the Firebirds and Lightning game as part of Queensland Day, then the Cowboys, Dolphins, and then Brisbane and the Titans. So a lot happening, along with the game we just talked about, just the Suns and the Lions. Everything was happening on Queensland Day, and how good was it? It was such a good night. I'll talk a bit more about Queensland Day as well at the end. Starting off with it, 6th of June, Queensland Firebirds, Sunshine Coast Lightning, 7 p.m. at Nissan Arena there. A big, nice sort of arena that the Firebirds are making their home now. The Firebirds get a win 66-59 over the Lightning. In quarter one, it was a tie 16-16. From there, it was really the Firebirds to extend their lead 17-14 in both the second and third quarter, and they took a 16-15 point result in quarter number 4 to give them a 7-point victors in the result, which was huge for them. Firebirds shot 91% on their goal shots and 67% on super goals, whereas Lightning were only 76% on goals and 50% on their super goal attempts. Firebirds finished with 53% time in possession, which is a narrow lead for them. Tied on intercepts 6-6, but they led with only 19 turnovers compared to Lightning having 24. So a really nice game. That was one of the last ones of Queensland Day, but a good result for the Queensland Firebirds. Then on the Cowboys and Dolphins, which is a slightly earlier game at 5:30 p.m. at Queensland Country Bank Stadium up in Townsville. The Dolphins spoiled the party, though, in their trip to North Queensland to win 40-14 over the Cowboys. 2 tries for Cobbo, Asako, Katoa, Tabuai, Fido, Donahue, and Flegler for the Dolphins. And for the Cowboys, Talangi and Tom Chester with 2 as well. Asako was 6 of 7 on his conversions, and Clifford 1 of 3. And it really begs the question, are the Dolphins premiership contenders? My thoughts, yes, the Dolphins are a chance of winning a premiership this year. Big call, maybe not. You have to let me know your thoughts in the comments on YouTube when this goes live, because it is a big point to pull up. Is the Dolphins, can they win a premiership? Should they be considered premiership contenders? And to finish up, the last game on Queensland Day, which is a beauty to watch, Broncos and Titans, 7:35 p.m. at Suncorp Stadium. The Titans, say this, they won 28-23 over the Broncos. It's something I talked about possibly happening, but it really wasn't something that I would have expected. Morin with a try, Sammy with a try, 2 for Jaden Campbell, and Kenny getting the last one. Pirakora with a try, Staggs with a try, Arthurs with a try, and Grant Anderson as well on his return. Jaden Campbell 4 of 5 on conversions. Adam Reynolds 3 of 4 on his, and he got the field goal as well. The Titans upset the Broncos. Talked so much about it last week previewing the matches, but what a result for them to upset the Broncos at their home after they just lost to the Dragons. And this begs the question, I guess, very differently to the Dolphins. Are the Broncos done? Can they come back from this? It's very, I guess, kind of similar with Brisbane Lions, but maybe not on the same level. Can they make the top 8 Brisbane Broncos? Can they make the top 4? Can they win the premiership? Those are so many questions. How is it that we feel about that? For me, I think they can make the 8. I see a premiership or a top 4 very, very unlikely. And even with the top 8, if they don't turn their season around soon, I don't know if top 8 is going to be possible for them. With all these games and including the Lions game, it made for such a great Queensland day. Such a good day, Sunday afternoon, watching a bunch of sport into the evening, having a few drinks. There's nothing better. It was such a great evening, just sport game after sport game, and there's truly nothing that I love more, and I'm sure that others would have felt the same way. Such a good feel for Queensland Day, along with all the other celebrations in that, to see a lot of people getting recognised, a lot of businesses in that getting recognised. It's such a big part of why we are Queenslanders and what makes us, in my opinion, very controversial, say it, the best state in the country. We'll be back after a short break with our Queensland Reds game review / season review. And we're back after a short break here with the Super Rugby, or Queensland Reds game review, also doubling up as the season review. That kind of spoils a little bit about how this game review is going to be. But Saturday, 6th of June, Chiefs and Reds, 5:05 p.m, FMG Stadium. It was on Queensland Day the Reds got to play, but they were playing, obviously, in NZ, so they were still a part of it in spirit. The Chiefs come away with a 46-24 point win, giving them a very comfortable win, but as we do know, the team that lost by the least out of the 3 games would go through, so that meant that it wasn't guaranteed to be done. Tries 2 for Tami Afalo, 1 for Takiaho, 2 for McKenzie and Hutchinson scoring as well. For the Reds, Salakai, Lotto, Ross and Fezler. McKenzie, 5 of 6 on conversions, 2 of 2 penalty goals. Gordon, once again, a good night with the kicking boots, 3 of 3 conversions, penalty goals, 1 of 1. And the Chiefs do narrowly end the Reds of being the losing team that would make the semi-finals. So the Brumbies, well and truly, were never going to be that after being absolutely blown off the park, 66-12. The Blues then lost by 21 to the Crusaders, which meant if they lost by less than 21, the Reds, they would be the team that would end up playing the Hurricanes, and the Reds ended up losing by 22. So only narrowly did it end their season, the Blues being the team to go face the Hurricanes. So very unfortunate for the Reds, which brings us now into the Queensland Reds season review. We'll take a look at all the numbers. And when you look at these numbers, you can see that even though the result we've had and where we've ended up, this is still a huge success in the books compared to what any other, particularly Australian team, were able to do with how badly the Hurricanes were able to beat the Brumbies. So the Reds really had it not nearly as bad when you look at a lot of these sort of numbers. So the Reds finished by going out in the qualifying final. They finished 5th on the table in the regular season, 8 wins, 6 losses, and 5 bonus points. The Reds scored 364 points in the comp, and they conceded 386 points. So their for and against led them being in the negatives, which is a bit unfortunate for them, but definitely not as bad as some teams, but definitely the worst of the top 6 teams that made it through to the finals. The Reds scored a total of 56 tries in the composition this year. And I think a big one that really led to a lot of their losses throughout the regular season was the fact that they had the 7th best line out in the competition with a win percentage of 81.7%, which is nowhere near a lot of the other teams, towards the 97% for some teams. They did, though, have the 2nd best tackle completion percentage, just below the Western Force, with 87.9%, the Reds. So big numbers that really did show that they still were very good. We'll now go ahead and take a look at how some of their players performed across the comp, looking at who were the top 10 across the categories from tries, carries, clean breaks, all of that. And a lot of Queenslanders made this list, which just shows you that there were some big standouts for the Queensland Reds this year, and these ones are much included in that. Firstly, in the most carries, in ninth place was our very own Harry Wilson with 143 for the year, showed his effort with ball carrying all throughout the year. Big year for this man, and you'd argue he's Queensland Reds Player of the Year. I would say, at least myself. He was fourth with most clean breaks, which for 17. He was also had the most meters gained of the competition, Jock Campbell, with 1,026. Joe Bryle also leading his category with the most line-out wins with 65. So he might have had nearly one of the worst line-outs in the comp, but Joe Bryle was a star for the Queensland Reds line-out time. Jock Campbell as well was in another category. He was 10th most offloads as well with 14. Harry Wilson, another category in his 4th most tackles in the comp with 194. Fraser McWright was second in that category for tackles with 204. And then Filippo Dunguno was tied most offloads with 23. He also had the 9th most meters gained with 666. So Harry Wilson, Jock Campbell, Joe Bryle, Filippo Dunguno, Fraser McWright, all in the top 10 of a number of different categories for the Reds. So they were the big standouts for the year for sure. And this is a bit of a different feeling for the Queensland Red because the Les Kiss era, that when he came in, he turned the Reds completely around, is now done. Les Kiss, with already well and truly mentioned for maybe a year now, that he will be taking over from Joe Schmidt after his few first tests of the summer. He'll be the new Wallabies coach, Les Kiss, so a big step up for him in his career. And it means that era is done, and Vern Cotter will begin his era in 2027 as the Queensland Reds head coach. And he's coming from a pretty decent job himself. He is the current Blues head coach for the New Zealand team there, and he won Super Rugby in 2024. So even though the era that Les Kiss has created and left is done, Queensland Reds are in very safe hands in 2027. I feel like maybe Cotter is the one that kind of brings the Reds to that next sort of level. So a very exciting year for the Queensland Reds. And even with their narrow missing out on being that last team in the semi-finals, they have done themselves really proud this year, and a huge result and a good year for the Queensland Reds. We're back after a short break with the conclusion of the episode. And after a short break here, we're ready to wrap up the June 9th episode of Jason's Sports Rundown podcast. We kicked off the episode talking about the Origin teams, how well I did. I did pretty well with the Queensland team, a few less on the New South Wales side, but over both teams, pretty good on my predictions. It was narrowly difference between some starting, some on the bench, and vice versa that I got wrong. In my only maybe really rash prediction was thinking that Tom Dearden would be fit and ready to go, and he wasn't even close to being the case with that one. I talked about the sporting around the globe, so highlighted the NBA and NHL along with the latest IndyCar race and Monaco F1 race as well. Then went into some newer stuff. We did the Brisbane Lions game review, and then we looked at the Queensland Day sporting games as well, the other ones, which were the Super Netball, Queensland Firebirds, Sunshine Coast Lightning. Then we had the Dolphins, so the Dolphins and the North Queensland Cowboys, and then the Gold Coast Titans and Broncos game, which was the final one. And then the Queensland Reds, we looked at their game with the Chiefs and wrapping up their season now that their season is done for the Super Rugby Pacifica 2026 campaign, and they end the Les Kiss era and move into the Vern Cotter, the current Blues head coach, who will take over in 2027. So a lot happening, and it is now a countdown towards State of Origin game number 2, which is a must-win for Queensland. So that'll be all exciting stuff to come, and even more new stuff coming in Friday's episode. So until then, I will catch you then.